Good evening, everyone. The next chapter in Red Kayak by Priscilla Cummings. I'm going to be reading chapter 14 to you today. I want to again give a quick shout out to Priscilla Cummings for giving us permission to read these chapters online to our students while we're going through the situation with the COVID 19 virus. So here we go. I'm just going to pick up where we left off. Chapter 14. What was I going to do? In those first paralyzing moments, I didn't have a clue, just an increasingly sick feeling in my stomach. Finally, I pushed myself up. I stood and wrapped the drill inside the second unused leaf bag. The bag was way too big, but I just kept wrapping the drill around and around in it. I carried it back up the hill to where I parked my bicycle in the shade by the side of the garage. I put the bag wrapped drill in my backpack and I got on my bike. I had to tell somebody, but who? Not my parents. Not yet, anyway. JT, I figured. I would tell JT, and then together we could figure out what to do. All the way down the D'Angelo's long driveway, I pedaled faster and faster as I put more and more of it together. How angry Digger had been at the D'Angelo's for buying his grandfather's farm. How he had spit out, "Paddle hard, you sucker," when he saw the red kayak that morning. When I hit the paved road, I leaned into the turn so hard I almost spun the bike out of control. You'd have thought that I was rushing to report a fire the way I sped down the road. At JT's driveway, I put on my brakes. And then I pedaled hard up the long dirt road to his house. I thought about taking the drill and showing him right off, but then decided not to, and I left it in my backpack with my bike. My heart was pounding like crazy, and I was out of breath as I climbed the wide front steps and stood on his porch, knocking at the door. It was pretty scary to think that one of my friends might have had something to do with Ben dying, and I was beginning to wonder what would happen to Digger if it turned out to be true. Kate opened the door and caught me off guard with her nice smile. "Hi, Brady." "Hey," I said, still breathing hard. The smell of something baking, something chocolate, wafted up behind her, and I spied JT's cute little sister, Carrie, peeking around the corner to see who had come. Kate's smile disappeared. She lowered her voice. "I guess you heard." "What?" I asked, confused, a little panicked. Did she know what I knew? Had I missed something? "Yeah, my father's in the hospital," she said. "Carl came with the ambulance this morning and took him." "No, no, I didn't know," I managed to say. "Your father?" Kate nodded. "Yeah, he passed out at the breakfast table," she indicated with her thumb. He's back awake now. They called from the hospital. We think it's his kidneys. You remember when he had that really bad attack a year ago?" I did remember. JT's father was in the hospital for almost a month. I even came over and helped JT with his chores after school. Kate's news blew some of the steam off of my anger. "I'm really sorry to hear about your dad," I said, but I wasn't forgetting why I had come. "Is JT here?" "Yeah, he's culling down at the chicken houses," she said. "Wouldn't you know it? We had a huge shipment of new chicks yesterday." "You think it'd be okay if I went to see him?" I asked. "Sure," Kate said, nodding eagerly. "He'll be glad to see you." "Well, I'll go give him a hand then," I said. I went back down the steps and walked across their flat dirt yards, past several outbuildings and the huge grain silos to the first of four long chicken houses. I hated going inside those things because they were so warm. That and the ammonia smell from the chicken waste was so strong that you could hardly breathe. But I was desperate to talk to JT. Inside the door to the first house, I peered down the narrow building, but all I saw were thousands of yellow baby chicks peeping up a storm and crowding one another around their feeders. They were actually kind of cute at this stage, so small and fluffy. In a matter of days, though, they would shed that pale yellow fuzz for tough new white feathers, and in just a few weeks, the chicken people, Purdue or whoever, they would be back to collect them. There were these big electric fans droning in the windows to keep the birds cool, but it was just as hot as I remembered. I scoped out the chicken house as far as I could see, but I didn't spot my friend. Back outside, I took a deep breath of fresh air and I walked, my feet scuffing up dirt, over to the next chicken house. Inside the door, I saw JT right away, wearing a bright red t shirt. He was about halfway down the building, walking slowly, the chicks parting and making a path as he moved. He had a pillowcase in one hand, and when he bent over occasionally, I knew he was picking out the dead chicks or the ones that were hobbling around getting ready to keel over. As I walked toward him, the chicks scattered at my feet. Their high pitched peeping vibrated in my ears, and the soles of my shoes picked up layers of crappy chicken manure, but it was impossible to avoid. And it wasn't until I was right behind JT that he finally noticed me. When he turned and our eyes met, I could see the pain that he had bottled up inside. Because of his dad? The sweat dripping off his face could have been tears for all I knew. JT's eyes dropped. I looked away too, and when I did, I spotted a dead chick, its little feet twitching, and bent over to pick it up. Here, I said, offering it to JT. He opened his pillowcase and I placed it inside. I've got to talk to you, I said loudly so he could hear above the din. He nodded. Let me finish this house, he replied just as loud. Together, we waded through the ocean of yellow chicks, both of us stopping here and there to pick up the dead or the dying ones, adding them to the bag. Outside, we walked over to a compost bin where JT dumped the contents of his pillowcase and made a body count, noting the number on a piece of paper. It was a lousy job, but twice a day, somebody at the farm had to do the culling. So you heard about my dad? JT asked. He wiped the sweat off his face with the back of his hand. I'm sorry, I said. How is he? JT folded up the paper and pushed it into his jeans pocket. I don't know. We're going to go see him after we eat. Look, I started. I know this is not a good time for you, JT, but I just discovered. Hey, you ever had surgery? JT asked, cutting me off. Surgery? His question and the bluntness of it threw me. Yeah, you ever been put to sleep? Hesitating, I nevertheless answered, Once, I said, wondering where this was going. You remember when I tore the cartilage in my knee during that basketball game back in sixth grade? Oh, yeah, JT said, fidgeting with the pencil in his hand. Anyway, I'm thinking about giving my father one of my kidneys. If I'm compatible, that is. You people at the hospital, they're going to do a blood test on my mom and me. I stared at my feet, not sure how to respond, and then I peered back at JT. JT, I'm sorry about your dad. Yeah, it's awful. But listen, you gotta listen to me, I continued firmly, the urgency returning, because I need your help. There was a pause. JT was not making eye contact, still fidgeting with that darn pencil. He asked in a small voice, What is it? Over at the D'Angelo's, where I'm working now. I was down at the boathouse raking up. And finally, JT looked up at me. And I found my father's drill. JT's eyes grew large. My heart jumped into my throat. JT? He didn't say anything, but he took a step backward like I was going to hit him. Only something hit me instead. Do you know something about this? JT, did Digger drill holes in the kayak? Barely, barely, I saw JT nod his head. I stared at him, and a terrible expression consumed JT's face. We didn't mean for Mrs. D'Angelo and Ben to get hurt, he blurted out. Oh my gosh, JT, you were in on this? A screen door slammed, and Kate called us. Guys, where are you? JT threw up both hands at me. Please, Brady, they don't know. Please don't say anything in front of Kate. Why? I demanded, screwing up my face. Why did you do it? It was a horrible time for Kate to show up, but she did just then, innocently rounding the corner of the chicken house. Hey, there you are. She put her hands on her hips and smiled. Hey, Grandma wants to know if you'll stay for dinner. Brady, it's just BLTs and corn because we're going to go to the hospital after dinner to see Daddy. But you're welcome to stay. JT and I glanced at each other. I made brownies. Kate chimed sweetly, trying to entice me to have dinner with them. Sure, why don't you? JT said in an uncertain voice. His hand, the one holding the pencil, was shaking now. I can't, I declared, angry beyond words at JT and Digger and trying really hard not to show it. Some friends they were, I thought. I got to go. In fact, I'm late already. Tell your grandmother I'm sorry, Kate. I walked away, but when JT tried to stop me, hey, Brady! I started running. When I got to my bike, JT was right behind me, breathing hard. Don't go to Diggers, he told me, grabbing my arm. Don't go without me. Why? Because I want to be there, and I can't go right now. I yanked my arm away. I can't believe you guys did it. Why? What the heck were you thinking, JT? It was a mistake, JT exclaimed. Yoo-hoo, boys! JT's grandmother waved her handkerchief and called to us from the front steps. JT, can't you convince Braden to stay? When JT looked back at my grandmother, or his grandmother, I jumped on my bike and tore out of there, straight for Digger's house. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that chapter. We'll be getting to chapter 15 real soon. But before I go, don't forget, you can check out previous chapters by looking at Mr. Knepp's channel right here and subscribing to it. You can also check out the last chapter by going to my channel and subscribing to it. There's also some other chapters from some classes, the books that we're reading in those classes. So we'll see you soon.